Hello everyone, thank you for joining me for my February Q&A. This is February. It is my least favorite month out of all the months. I hate February. And yeah, if my hair looks greasy, that's because it is. Because it's too cold to wash my hair. Yeah. I put dry shampoo in it, but and strained it, but I haven't washed it in like 4 days or something. Anyways, in other news, also, if the audio is worse than it normally is, my external mic broke, so I'm using the microphone that's built into my camera, and it's not as good at all as my external mic was, so I need to get a new one. So just please be patient with me. I haven't gotten around to getting another one. Okay, also I'm in kind of a bad mood. Like I said, I hate February, and I'm hungry. So, first question, yeah, this is from Twitter, it's from Marcel. Do you think INTJ people are more likely to have psychological problems? So, what he's referring to, if you don't know, is the Myers-Briggs personality test. I'm personally an INFJ. I don't know, I really honestly don't buy into the whole personality type thing. I think people are way more complex than that. I know people think it's fun and all this stuff, but honestly, I don't really relate to my personality type that much. Like, I mean, I've taken the test like a bunch of times, and I always get INFJ, and I agree that I'm like intuitive, or I don't even know the acronyms. I mean, I know I'm introverted and whatever, but then when I read like the synopsis, I'm like, I mean, there's some things sound like me and some things don't. So I don't really know if people should put that much stock in the Myers-Briggs personality test, and I know people put a lot of stock in that. I don't know why, because it doesn't really seem that important. I don't know. I think people are very complex, and you know, we're a mixture of our environment, of our life experiences or lack thereof, and also chemicals or biological makeup and stuff like that. So I don't know if they can be explained in a certain number of letters, but whatever. So no, I really don't think that's true. I think anyone could have a mental illness, but I don't know. That's just my opinion, but I'm sure there are other thoughts about that. I'm not saying I'm right or whatever. Okay, okay, so next question is from Casey. With Game of Thrones Season 6 coming up, what are your thoughts and maybe the show outpacing the books for the first time? Well, actually, this would not be the first time that the show outpaced the books. The end of last season, the show totally outpaced the books. So it's already happened. So it wouldn't be anything new for the next season. It's kind of like, you know, they're already outpaced the books. Like, I don't want to go into it because I don't want to spoil anything for people who haven't seen it, but it's already outpaced the books. I've read all the books so far. You know, there's still one left to go, or maybe two, I don't even know. But I've read all the books that have come out, and I've watched all of the show, and the show did outpace the book at the end of last season. So yeah, I think it's kind of expected for that to happen. But I also know that George R.R. Martin works on the show as well, so and they're doing the show based on what he tells them is happening. So I mean, he works on the writing of the show as well. So I think it'll be cool. You know, you'll have the book and then you'll have the show, and they'll be like two different things, and I think that's fine and interesting. Next question is from Lewis. Do you have trouble ordering food at restaurants? Do I have trouble? No, actually, I don't. I used to. When I was a raw foodist, it was terrible because when I would go out to eat with people, I couldn't eat anything other than just like plain lettuce at most places, unless it was an actual raw food restaurant, which there aren't many around here, or I don't know. That's pretty rare in most places. So yeah, it was awful when I was a raw foodist. It was awful. I could not order anything at a restaurant, and it was always embarrassing and always gave me a lot of stress and anxiety, and I don't know, I just hated it. But ever since I've been a normal vegan, or like a regular vegan, not a raw vegan, it's so much easier, and that's like kind of one of the reasons why I stopped being a raw vegan, is just because it totally sucked out a lot of my sanity, I guess, as far as like I don't know, just making things work in everyday life and social situations. It was just impossible for me to eat out at a restaurant without a big ordeal, having to like explain to the waiter or just being like, I can't eat anything here. So that really sucked. But now that I'm a regular vegan, I can pretty much order anything and just tell them to leave off cheese, not anything. Like I just order like something that's vegetarian. Like most restaurants nowadays have a vegetarian option, and I'll order whatever the vegetarian thing is, but with no cheese or dairy or something like that. So it's pretty easy at almost all restaurants, not all, but pretty much almost all the restaurants, if they're not like, I don't know, like a barbecue place or, I don't know, a steakhouse or something, I don't know. As long as they're not like anti-vegetarian or vegan or whatever, then it's pretty easy for me to just be like, make me this, please, but leave off cheese or whatever. Or leave off, I don't know, leave out dairy or something like that. It's pretty easy for me to do. Next question is from Johnny. What is the most serious mental condition and what psychological illness do serial killers most likely have? I don't know, I feel like that's a difficult question to answer as far as like seriousness, but I know that the most deadly mental illness or the most deadly group of mental illnesses are eating disorders. So yeah, and then I probably second to that would be like depression and bipolar disorder. I just don't feel like it's a really good thing to compare seriousness as mental disorders because they're all pretty serious, you know. All mental disorders are serious, but the psychological illness that most serial murderers have, I feel like a lot of serial murderers don't have a mental illness. They have something that's called a personality disorder, and that's usually less treatable than a mental illness. Mental illnesses are usually treatable with medication and therapy and stuff, but personality disorder, that's something that kind of the person needs to be in prison. Not all personality disorders, don't get me wrong. Just the personality disorder I'm thinking of is if they are a psychopath. And I've made a video about sociopaths and psychopaths before, and I got a lot of hate in the comments from some people who were sociopaths. And anyways, I don't know how to respond to that sort of situation, but I don't like stigmatizing any sort of person for anything that they were born with or something like that. But mental illnesses are stigmatized as being like the evil in society, when actually personality disorders are the evil in society, because a person can either plead insanity or not plead insanity, and if they're pleading insanity, then they should get special treatment because they do have an actual mental illness, which is a sickness, which is treatable with medication. So if the person gets on medication, they can be let out of the mental institution or whatever. They don't need to be in prison their whole lives. However, if someone has a personality disorder, if someone is a psychopath, they can't really take a medication to snap you out of being a psychopath, as far as I know. So after that person has committed a crime, they need to be in prison for the rest of their lives so that they are not a harm to people in society. So I think there are a lot of, serial murderers usually are psychopaths. They have the personality disorder. When it comes to mental illness, I think it can happen when people are having psychosis. Like, it didn't happen to me. Like, I didn't murder anyone, and I would never murder anyone, but I've heard stories of people with bipolar disorder and schizophrenia in their psychosis. They had like a really serious, awful case of psychosis, and they ended up killing someone or numerous people, which is extremely scary and unfortunate. But those people can successfully plead insanity and get on treatment, and then they're fine once they're on treatment and they're totally sane. But it's really unfortunate that that happens, because then it kind of stigmatizes other people with bipolar disorder and schizophrenia, or schizoaffective people. Anyone who has a mental illness that has psychosis kind of stigmatizes the rest of us who, when we have psychosis, it has nothing to do with murdering anyone. At least we never get to that point. It's always like really spiritual, fairy things, or I don't know, or just like paranoia about the government coming after us or something. I don't know. I feel like it's rare for it to lead to murder, but it does happen, so then people think that everyone who's crazy is going to commit murder, but that's not the case. A lot of people with mental illness would commit murder, but I don't know, it's very rare, so whenever it does happen, you hear about it, and it's just like, oh, that person had bipolar disorder, oh, that person had depression, oh, that person had schizophrenia, and then you think that everyone with bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, or depression has it in them to be a murderer, when that is, it couldn't be farther from the truth. And it's just really sad that can happen, for sure. I mean, it has happened and it can happen, and I don't think that will ever happen to me. I don't think that'll ever happen to most people. Like 99% of 99.999% of people with bipolar disorder and schizophrenia are never going to murder someone. It's very rare that it can get to that point. So anyways, most murderers are psychopaths, and they should just be in prison the rest of their lives. They don't have a mental illness. Okay. And sometimes psychopaths will coincidentally have a comorbid disorder, like a psychopath will coincidentally also be diagnosed with bipolar or depression or other illnesses. Next question is from Cosmic. What are your reasons for avoiding soy? I've read that as long as the soy product isn't GMO or non-organic, then it's perfectly fine. Of course, you can't eat all soy on a vegan diet. Okay, the reason I avoid soy, I don't avoid soy altogether. Like, I'm not like neurotic about it or like really fanatical about it. But if there's an option to not have soy, I'll go for the non-soy option, and I try to avoid it for the most part because food companies will pump soy into every product they can as a protein source because it's so cheap and plentiful and all this stuff. So it's just like, there's a risk of people who are vegetarian or vegan, there's a risk that we will accidentally eat too much soy, and it's everything in moderation, you know. It's never good to have too much of any one food, especially when it's something like soy, which is commonly genetically modified, and it's also commonly, what's the word I'm looking for? Oh, and it's also associated with being a hormone disruptor, so it's associated with creating estrogen, or like creating like or mimicking estrogen, or like creating an abundance of estrogen in your body. But basically, it causes hormonal imbalances, supposedly, or that's what some studies say. So I just try to avoid it because I believe in moderation, and there are so many vegan and vegetarian products that have soy in them. So if I can get the option that's soy-free, I'm going to go with the soy-free option, because it's just not healthy to have too much of one item. And I know there are some things where I eat a lot of, like some things I feel like you can eat a good amount of, but I feel like if it's something like soy, which is often genetically modified, I mean, if you find a soy product and you're like, oh, it's non-GMO soy, and it's something that you really want, then that's great. But if ever there's an option that's soy-free, I'll go with that. Oh yeah, and also it can cause thyroid issues. So when I first became a vegetarian, I had like low thyroid, I had hypothyroidism. Then once I mostly cut soy out of my diet, I went back to normal. So I think it might have been the soy, because it was right after I had just gone vegetarian, and I was eating like all these meat replacement products that were all made out of soy, and I really think that affected my thyroid, because other studies show that soy can be anti-thyroid or give you thyroid disruption. I don't know, thyroid hormone disruption. It's a hormone disruptor, I'm pretty sure. So I try to avoid it. Okay, next question is from Christina. Do you feel obligated to tell all your friends and family you have bipolar? If so, how's the best way to approach the topic? No, I don't feel obligated to tell anyone that I have bipolar unless it actually matters, which really it doesn't. I mean, I think it's important that my parents know, and they already do, just because they were there when I was diagnosed, or they were there, you know, for everything. But yeah, my parents know, and that's really the only people who need to know. Like, your emergency contact, basically, is the only person who needs to know. And my battery is running out. I don't feel obligated to tell anyone you have bipolar disorder because it's no one's business. And if you do need to tell someone, like your parents or your guardian or your emergency contact, it should be easy. I don't know. If you're close to that person, it should be fine. Okay, so that is all that I can answer right now. I can't answer all of the questions because the video would be too long. So thank you guys so much for your questions, and I hope you guys will join me for my next Q&A next month. And yeah, so alright, have a good day. Bye!